I signed the papers on Tuesday. My house, gone. 23 years of memories traded for one perfect day, my son's wedding day. 7 days later, he called me. Mom, we're getting divorced. And you know what the worst part is? It's not even the money, but we'll get to that. Because what happened after, nobody saw coming. Let me back up. My name is Patricia. I'm 58. And up until 3 months ago, I lived in the same house where I raised my son Daniel. The house my late husband and I bought when Daniel was 2. The house with the growth marks on the kitchen door frame. The house where we celebrated every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone. That house was all I had left of my husband when he passed away 6 years ago. But when Daniel came to me with tears in his eyes, telling me he'd found the one, telling me about Sarah and how she was everything he'd ever wanted, telling me they wanted to get married but couldn't afford the wedding of their dreams, what was I supposed to say? He's my only child, my everything. Sarah wanted a destination wedding, Hawaii. She'd shown me the Pinterest boards, the beach ceremony, the flower arrangements, the reception venue overlooking the ocean. She'd been planning this since she was a little girl, Daniel said. The price tag? $85,000. I nearly choked on my coffee. Daniel worked in tech support. Sarah was a dental hygienist. Good jobs, steady, but they just bought a condo together. Student loans, car payments, they didn't have that kind of money. Neither did I. But I had the house. My sister Janet thought I'd lost my mind. Patricia, you can't be serious. That's your home. Where are you going to live? I'll figure it out, I told her. He's my son. It's a wedding. They can get married at the courthouse. They can have a small ceremony. They don't need Hawaii. But when I looked at Daniel's face, when I saw how happy Sarah made him, I couldn't say no. The housing market was good. My house was paid off. The realtor said I could get $280,000 for it. Easy. After closing costs and fees, I'd have enough to pay for the wedding and have a little left over for a small apartment somewhere. It happened fast. 3 weeks from listing to sold. The buyers were a young couple with a baby on the way. They loved the house. They loved the neighborhood. They said they could see their kid growing up there, just like Daniel did. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment across town, 900 square feet, beige carpet, a kitchen so small I could barely turn around in it. But I had enough money left after the wedding to cover rent for about 8 months. I'd find a job. I'd make it work. The wedding was in 3 weeks. And Sarah? Sarah changed. Suddenly, nothing was good enough. The flowers I'd suggested? Too cheap looking. The cake design I'd found? Too basic. She wanted upgrades. She wanted additions. Every day there was something new. Mom, can we add another $3,000 for better photography? Daniel asked, voice small. Mom, Sarah wants to extend the open bar another hour. It's just $1,500 more. Mom, the dress she really wants is $4,000 over budget. I said yes, every time. Because what was I going to do? I'd already sold the house. The money was sitting there, earmarked for their happiness. The wedding planner called me directly. Mrs. Patterson, I want to confirm you're aware the final cost is now $97,000. $12,000 over the original budget. I felt sick, but I smiled on the phone and said, yes, that's fine. I started applying for jobs, retail, reception work, anything. At 58, nobody was exactly jumping to hire me, but I had to try. My savings wouldn't last forever. The wedding was beautiful. I'll give Sarah that. It was absolutely perfect. The beach at sunset, white chairs and neat rows on the sand. an arch covered in orchids that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Sarah looked like a princess in a dress covered in crystals and lace, and Daniel looked happy. So happy. I stood in the front row in a dress I'd bought at TJ Maxx for $60, and I cried because my son was getting married, because I was so proud of the man he'd become, because his father should have been there to see it, and because in the back of my mind, a small voice kept whispering, "You're homeless for this. You gave up everything for this moment." But I pushed it down. This was what parents did, right? We sacrificed. We gave our kids better than what we had. The reception was incredible. A 10-piece band, top-shelf liquor, filet mignon and lobster tail for dinner, a 7-tiered cake, fireworks at the end of the night. Sarah's parents were there. Her dad owned a car dealership. Her mom was a lawyer. They wore designer clothes and took photos with their expensive cameras. They kept saying how lovely everything was, but I caught the mother looking at me once or twice, this weird expression on her face. Like pity, almost. 7 days after the wedding, my phone rang. It was 11 p.m. I was already in bed, in my tiny apartment, trying to fall asleep. Daniel's name on the screen. "Mom, can I come over?" 20 minutes later, he was sitting on my $200 secondhand couch, his head in his hands. "We're getting divorced." I couldn't speak. The words didn't make sense. Divorced. They'd been married for a week. 7 days. What happened? I finally managed to ask. And that's when the truth came out. Sarah had been cheating on him with her ex-boyfriend. The whole time they were together. The ex was at the wedding, in the back. Daniel had just found out. But here's the kicker, the part that made my blood run cold. Sarah's parents knew I'd sold my house. Daniel had told them, proud that his mom loved him so much. And Sarah's mom had pulled her aside before the wedding and told her she was making a mistake, that Daniel came from nothing, that his family couldn't provide. Sarah had agreed, but she wanted the wedding. She dreamed of this wedding. So she went through with it, knowing she was going back to the ex-boyfriend afterward.
I sat there, staring at my son, and I felt something break inside me. All of it. The house, the memories, the financial security, the future I'd planned. Gone. For a wedding that celebrated a marriage that was a lie. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to find Sarah and tell her exactly what I thought of her. But looking at Daniel's face, seeing him so broken and betrayed, I realized this wasn't about me. My son needed me, and I was here, in this tiny apartment that wasn't home, but I was here. "It's gonna be okay," I told him, even though I didn't know if that was true. He looked up at me with red eyes. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Your house, everything you gave up." "Stop," I said. "You didn't know? This isn't your fault." But part of me was screaming inside because it felt like my fault for not saying no, for not asking more questions, for not seeing the red flags. Here's what nobody tells you about sacrifice. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes you give everything and it still falls apart. And you left standing in the ruins trying to figure out what the hell just happened. But this story doesn't end there. Because 3 days after Daniel told me about the divorce, something happened that changed everything. Sarah's parents called me, both of them, on speakerphone. "Mrs. Patterson, we need to talk about the wedding expenses," her father said. My heart sunk. Were they going to ask me to pay for the divorce too? We spoke with our attorney, Sarah's mother continued, and we've learned what Sarah did, how she used you, how she manipulated this entire situation. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. We're writing you a check, her father said, for the full amount of the wedding, $97,000. We're mortified by our daughter's behavior, and we take full responsibility for not stopping this sooner. I almost dropped the phone. We can't give you back your house, Sarah's mother said, her voice cracking, but we can give you this. Please, let us do this. The check arrived 4 days later, certified mail. I stared at it for 20 minutes before I could even process what I was looking at. $97,000 made out to me. I paid off my credit cards. I put a down payment on a small house in a neighborhood I actually like better than my old one. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, a yard, space for Daniel to visit. But here's the thing. The money helped. Of course it did. But what really mattered happened about 2 weeks after all this went down. I was unpacking boxes in my new house when Daniel showed up with Janet, my sister. They were carrying grocery bags and cleaning supplies. We're helping you settle in. And I'm making lasagna, your favorite. Daniel hugged me tight. Mom, I got a promotion at work, better pay, and I want to help you with your mortgage. Let me do this, please. I started crying. Not sad tears, not angry tears, just tears. Because here's what I learned through this whole mess. Houses are just buildings. Weddings are just parties. What matters is the people who show up when everything falls apart. Am I angry about what happened? Yes. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about Sarah, and I feel rage like I've never felt before. She used my love for my son as a weapon. She saw my sacrifice and exploited it. But would I do it again? Would I sell my house if Daniel came to me tomorrow and said he needed help? I don't know. And I think that's okay. I think I'm allowed to not know. What I do know is this. I'm learning to set boundaries. I'm learning that saying no doesn't mean I love someone less. I'm learning that sacrifice is meaningful when it's respected, not when it's taken for granted. Daniel is doing better. He's in therapy. He's working on himself. He apologizes almost daily for what happened. And every time I tell him the same thing, you didn't do this, she did. Sarah, I haven't heard from her. She signed the divorce papers without contest. Last I heard, she moved to another state with her ex-boyfriend. I hope I never see her again. But there's one more thing I need to tell you. One more piece of this story that I haven't shared yet. And it's probably the most important part. 2 months after I moved into my new house, I got a call from the couple who bought my old house, the Young family with the baby on the way. Mrs. Patterson, this is Amy Henderson. We bought your house. My stomach dropped. Were there problems, issues I didn't disclose? Was something wrong? We found something, she said. In the attic, a box. It has your name on it. I drove over there that afternoon. Amy and her husband were so kind. They invited me in, and it felt surreal walking through those rooms that weren't mine anymore. The box was in the attic, exactly where I'd forgotten about it 20 years ago. My husband had put it there. Photos, letters, his grandfather's watch, a journal I didn't know he'd kept, and a letter addressed to me in his handwriting. If you're reading this, something happened to me. I need you to know that I've set up something for Daniel's future and for yours. Talk to my brother. He has the details. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the paper. Turns out, my husband had a life insurance policy I didn't know about. Not the one I collected when he died. Another one, smaller, meant for emergencies. His brother had been managing it,
waiting for me to ask about it, not one to overstep after my husband passed. The payout? $120,000. It was mine. It had always been mine. Here's what I'm trying to tell you. Sometimes we sacrifice because we think it's all we have to give. We drain ourselves empty, thinking that's what love requires. But sometimes there are resources we don't even know about, help we haven't asked for, options we haven't considered. I sold my house because I thought it was the only way, but it wasn't. And yeah, everything worked out in a weird roundabout way. The money came back, I got a new house, Daniel and I are closer than ever. But I'll never forget what it felt like to sign those papers, to watch strangers walk through my home, to pack up my life in the boxes and walk away. If you're a parent and your kid comes to you asking for something big, pause, just pause. Ask questions, look at all the options. Make sure you're not setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Because love isn't supposed to destroy you. Real love builds, it supports, it respects. And if someone truly loves you back, they'll never ask you to give up everything. They'll find another way, together. Daniel and I are planning a small ceremony, just us and close family. A do-over, he calls it. When he meets someone new, someone who deserves him, we'll celebrate the right way. A backyard party, pizza and beer, nothing fancy. Just real, just honest, just us. And honestly, that sounds perfect. I'm sharing this story because I know I'm not the only parent who's been here, who's sacrificed more than they should, who's learned the hard way that boundaries matter. If this happened to you, or if you're about to make a big sacrifice for someone you love, drop a comment below. Let's talk about it. Because we need to stop normalizing the idea that parents have to give up everything. We deserve a life too, and that's not selfish. That's survival. Thanks for listening to my story. Hit that like button if this connected with you, and subscribe if you want to hear more honest talk about family, money, and the messy reality of being human. I'll see you in the next one.